Alright, so for this build I started by building the base of a rock because I kind of wanted to be sitting out of a rock and I didn't really know what else I would do with the gray colors I was given. So I was building up this rock and then I decided to add some white as like some speckles, then decided against it, and then I just added a little bit of black just so I didn't know what to do with the black. So then here you can see I'm starting to do a little bit of a vine. I like natural shapes when it comes to building, so I just kind of meshed this one out. I think it ended up only being like 3x3 if it was like straight. So I built this out and I'm having a lot of fun with this because I love natural shapes and forming them to look kind of realistic. Obviously I didn't want to spend too long on each of these 8 builds, so I kind of did this quick. I could have done it better if I had time. So I decided that to make it look cool, kind of taking inspiration from like Mario games or cartoony games, I added some white spikes to the plant. I think I added too many in hindsight, but whatever. After I got done building the vine, I then decided to start building up the trunk of the tree. I decided to add some red and orange lines in the tree, kind of make it look tropical and warm of sorts. Obviously brown was going to be my main color, and since I didn't want to keep this a straight up tree, I started to turn it and curve it just a little bit here. And then I continued to build this up, and I enjoyed doing this a lot, so I extended a branch made out of brown, and then I did the exact same thing over here. This was a lot of fun. Kind of straightened it out a bit, made it a little bit taller, widened the branches, and then I think I ended up going for a fourth branch. And then I just added a little bit more detail with the orange and the red. Then I started selecting the rest of the blocks in my inventory down here. I got blue and then yellow. So down here I added a little bit of yellow, almost had some foliage or some moss. I enjoyed this one a lot. I think it added more than it should have. Then I went with the cotton candy pink color and I decided to make that one of the leaves. And I know that the original prompt said I only can use green for the leaves, but I decided against that because I think it'd be more fun if I added more color. So now I'm adding some cyan and some blue and some dark blue as the second leaf patch. Then over here you can see I started doing camera trickery, so you can see over here I added a little bit more of the yellow foliage moss type stuff. Then I decided that since they wanted some green as leaves, I would do a little bit over here. So I did that and I felt it looked very boring, but I left it since I could say I kind of followed the prompt. Then I did it for a second one too. So I could just say that the ones on the right side from our view was just fungi. So yeah, that's the first tree made of every wool type. Thank you for suggesting. Now onto the second tree here. You see I started with just like an obsidian base and I started going up in a 2x2 tree shape form. Then I kind of shaped it out a little bit so I could have almost a little curve. You'll see what kind of direction I took with that later on. Then I continued the curve and I kind of almost made it a C shape and then continued it outwards and up. Now I kind of added the roots that would be showing here. I decided to make those crying obsidian. I felt this looks fun. So I go and I add all the roots, and then if you kind of can see the shaping that I'm doing very heavy roots and then I'm kind of shaping it to almost look like a palm tree. Then I add a little bit of the crying obsidian to the back. It almost looks like spines from this view, but it was just to be a little bit of more accent details. Then I decided to add the amethyst clusters and the amethyst blocks to give it more of a whimsical purple color. You can see here that I'm finishing off like the leaf shape. I do some more camera trickery before I finish off the top of the leaves. Then I came down and I looked at it after adding the amethyst clusters and I didn't like it. So I kind of decided to go for more of a palm tree, as I said before, esque type thing. So I threw in some more shading things to make it darker and lighter in some areas that I wanted it. I adjusted the roots a little bit. And here you can see here is exactly where my brain is like, oh, this looks terrible. So let me add a little bit more shading. And I did a little bit more on the back side, which you can't see, but I promise you I did it. Then I came in and I added some more leaves to go downwards. I guess if you want to call them leaves, they're rocks. But I decided to make them go all the way around and I kind of added them downwards and to the side. And then at the back and at the left side, so that this way it kind of looks a little bit more like a palm tree. You can see here the final like shape of the tree is coming together here, and I'm adding the final touches. I add a little bit more of the skulk around the edges of it to almost act as shading. I decided to make this a small tree, but I did want to finish up the roots and add a little bit more detail, so you can see I was doing that here. Came in and finished up the roots with a little bit more of the whimsical purple, some more shading. And then I added the final touches, and this was the final tree. Thank you for suggesting. Now here onto the third tree, you can see that to make this reach the height limit, I actually added a beacon here. I then covered the beacon using some purple colors, since the tree did say to be purple. I go and I do a little bit of shaping the way I kind of want it. I shape around it, I make the beacon thing purple. And since this thing is purple and the beacon goes to height limit, I meet the requirement of purple and reaches the height limit. So you can see here I'm starting to shape the tree. I add a little bit more shading. I had a lot of fun with these colors because I like purple. As you can see with the last tree, I added purple to it. So I keep going up and up. I went dark to kind of a lighter color. You can see I used a lot of glazed terracotta to add the transition between dark and light. So you can see here how I'm kind of adding like a branch, but pretty big. It's a pretty big branch. And I go and I shape the bottom over here. I go and I add all of the darks and the lights, and I shade it from behind. I add some really dark purple here. I really, really love the color of that purple. I'll have to look up what the name of it is. I think it's terracotta. So I go and I add branches, and I think I have, what, 1, 2, 3. This was a while ago I made this, so as doing this voiceover, I have no idea what I did. Looks like I went for 4 branches, because I think I'm building the 4th branch over there. And then you can see here, I make the branches all the same color because they're going to be covered by the leaves. You can go and see me add another branch over here using some diagonals. And I even added a branch way over on the left side so it doesn't look like it's too heavy to the right like my last 2 trees were. I go and I add a little bit of shading with how I want the trees to look. I put a little bit of the terracotta and the glazed terracotta, and then I go with the frog lights. I decided that I wanted frog lights to be my leaves of sorts. So I built the frog lights there, and then I go to this next part and build a little bit smaller of a frog light bunch. And then I go to this tree branch and I add a little bit bigger, kind of medium shaped frog light bunch. And then I go and I continue this. I didn't want it to look completely like leaves. I want it to look like its own type of tree. So you can see that I didn't follow a full leaf pattern. I almost made them look like bunches, kind of like mushrooms, or I don't know, maybe like a fungi. So yeah, I like mushrooms. I really like the look of mushrooms as a tree. So I go and I finish doing a little bit of the shading. As you can see here, I'm doing some more camera work to show the shading that I'm doing. I had a lot of fun with the dark purple colors. I love the dark purple colors in Minecraft. I think they look phenomenal. So as you can see here, I completely fulfilled my promise of doing what everybody asked, because this is purple and it reaches height limit. Maybe it was a little bit cheeky using the light beam going all the way up, but thanks for the suggestion. And on to tree 4 here, this was the giant baobab tree, which I'm probably pronouncing wrong, but I don't care. Someone suggested this and I had no idea what a baobab was. And I looked it up and I was like, oh, those are those trees that you see in African movies and cartoons, like Madagascar. I love the look of these trees. So you can see here, I decided that I did want to make it a bigger tree, and there's a cat running in the background of this whole video. I dealt with him in a very ethical way. So you can see here I'm using stripped jungle wood as the base of the tree, and for the darker shading types I use packed mud bricks, which packed mud bricks may be one of the best things added to the game. Mojang, good job. So you can see here that I go with a very thick base. I keep it going all the way up and I'm doing a lot of shading. You can see that I'm leaving parts out so I can do the darker shading. And my video glitched right there because I suck. And then I continue to add shading using dark logs and some mangrove roots. This was probably my favorite tree overall because I actually incorporated where I thought the sun would be in the thing. The sun is all the way off to the right. You can see here that I finalized the shading by topping it off at the very top with the exact same color most of the tree is. I go and I add the roots of sort, or more of just base of the tree. I shape it a little bit more for where you're going to be looking at it. I did not complete the back. The back looks terrible, but who cares? That's the Minecraft YouTuber way. So I continued here by adding shaping of the trees, and then I ended up liking that enough to where I went on to the branches. The branches I even have shaded a little bit. I get them darker at the tips because that's where the leaves will be. And then I go here and I add, I think, 4 total branches, maybe 5. If I look 1, 2, 3, 4. Did I add a 5th? I don't remember. It's forever ago. Okay, and then I had that to be a thicker branch so I could have a little bit more leaves on the back end so that when I have it at the angle I wanted you to look at it looks better. So you can see here that I'm just touching up with the shaping of the tree, and I'm getting the branches to the right length. And then I go and I make sure that the top of the tree looks great. Looks great to me anyways. And then I continue topping it off there. The cat keeps fading in and out of existence in the background too. Don't worry about that. Like I said, ethically, I dealt with him. So then I go here and I decide to start adding the leaves, and I think that I used mangrove for these leaves. I think it looks the best, at least in the plains biome. It kind of looks dark as if it were to be one of the African baobab trees. I then go ahead and I finish topping it off like this. I realized that I had them kind of flat now. I think I end up fixing that afterwards, but for this video itself, I kind of just have them like this. And after I top off the last of that tree with a little bit of floof at the top, I think that the main part of the branches and the tree leaves will be done. Here, you didn't see it because I decided to cut it very well. I decided to tick freeze and then cut it so I could change the bottom of the leaves to have a little bit more floof underneath. And then I went and I looked all the way around. I decided, hey, I like this a lot. Then I went and I wanted to do a little bit more shaping at the bottom and at the top, so I went and I grabbed new blocks that I didn't have prepared, which is why there's just an awkward freeze here. I went and I grabbed, I want to say I grabbed some walls, I think. Yep, it looks like here I have some slabs and walls, so I go and I edit that. I add it to the base of the trunk. I keep going up, adding a little bit more details on the sides, since this is the angle that I'm going to have you guys viewing it at. I already had this in mind of when I was going to build it, so I have it looking the best from this angle, and from the back it looks terrible, as I mentioned before. So I go and I do my last little touch up with walls and the slabs, and I think it looks great. I had a lot of fun with this. Thank you very much for suggesting this awesome tree. And here we go to the tree that I really badly hope does not have a copyright on it. But I'm not just gonna say the name of what this comes from. You should know, or maybe you shouldn't, maybe my building's that bad. But you can see here I started the basic shape with some birch logs, since this is just great. I just used the wrong thing. This is not the tree from the Lorax. This is the tree that is made to be birch with branches and have honey leaves. Well, I already told myself I'm only doing one take, so you get a mistake from good old MintChip13 in this video. So you can see here that for this tree, I decided that I just wanted to shape it like a basic birch tree that I would do as if I was making a whole birch forest. Meaning the tree itself isn't spectacular, but it would look it would look better if I had it, you know, in a group of 50 and I had it behind a house or something. So you can see here I did the branches very basic, kind of have them going upwards. I think I have 3 or 4 branches on here, and then I started doing the honey. And this was very basic tree. In fact, I didn't even care for this tree very much. It was probably my least favorite out of all the trees because I could have done the shaping a lot better, but I was getting tired as this was the last tree I made for the first day I was recording these. You can see here that I'm just kind of filling out the honey, making it look good. I want it to look like it was a vanilla Minecraft tree, just kind of added a little bit to the bottom. Like I said, this tree wasn't meant to look good on its own. This tree was meant to look good as if there was an entire forest of it. If I'm remembering right, I almost decided on not having honey as the branches and the actual leaves there. I was gonna make my own honey, like, gradient, and then I decided against it since to make sure the commenter got what they wanted, it was gonna be this. So you can see here that I'm kind of doing stuff on the back because it actually looks good from all angles, or bad from all angles if you don't think it looks like a good tree, but I kind of have it as very even all the way around. I realized from this angle it kind of just looks like a mushroom, as if this was growing in a mushroom forest. But I promise you, it's supposed to be a tree. I go and you can see here that I'm thinking of what the heck I'm gonna do to save this awful tree, and I honestly don't think I figured out a great way to do it, because I didn't. I left most of this the same. Typically if I mess up a tree, I'll just kind of delete it and then redo it. But as I said, I was tired, so I decided I was just gonna add a couple touches and be done with it. You can see here I'm going in and I'm adding just a little bit of shading using some diorite and just kind of touching up just a little bit, making it look a little bit brighter and darker in some areas. I go and with some polished diorite stairs and some polished diorite and a little bit of wool and just a whole bunch of stuff go, and I make the tree look a little bit better than it did before, or if you're, in my opinion, worse than before. And then because I suck at camera editing, I push the camera through the floor. I hate this tree with everything I got. Grr. Alright, thank you. And now we move on to the tree that I made and mistaked for the previous tree. This one right here is the one that I don't know if has a copyright on its design, so I'm gonna say I was just heavily inspired by a movie called The Lorax. And either way, I was just listening to a comment. So I decided to make this tree very basic because as I planned for the last tree to be the last one for the day, I ended up making it this one. Not smart. So here you can see I am absolutely fed up with building trees because it's late at night and I didn't care anymore, that I immediately didn't care about the shaping of the tree and started doing the floof at the top. You can see here that I made the most basic shape possible, and then when I realized it was a square, I decided to cut the corners and make it a little bit more smooth, since in the movies and in the book, it's like a round circular sphere. So I kind of tried to make it the best I could, and then I go in here and I add the top, and from right here you can see the bottom's flat. I realized that afterwards and I had to fix it. This was actually the tree that took me the shortest amount of time to make. You can see here that I'm just barely getting going with adding some shading, and the shading of course is not accurate. It looks like shading from a comic book. I added shading whenever I wanted. Then I started making the next layer 2 blocks thick. Then I decided I hated it, so I removed it. And then I see here that I did not make a circular sphere or anything. It just looks dumb and bad, and it kind of looks like a sucker that you'd get from a bank. So then you go here and I look and I'm like, well, alright, maybe I'll just adjust the shaping just a tiny bit. So I go and I change the shaping just minimally. I didn't do very much. Added a little bit more of a back to it. And I think this looks terrible from all angles. This one then became my newest least favorite tree I've ever made. I just despise these two trees that I made back to back. I think they're terrible, but what can I say? I was tired, and I'm really tired of making trees. Thank you for the suggestion anyways. You know how I said the last two were going to be my last trees of the day? Well, I decided against that because I was being dumb. I decided, well, I'll make this last tree. I had plans for a spectacular, cool, amazing redstone tree. And I still kind of did that depending on what you count spectacular and cool. The tree in question right here was supposed to be the one that said, make a tree that can spawn creepers. So I decided to have fun and make a very bad version of this tree on purpose. So I made a very basic tree that looks worse than the original Minecraft tree. And you can see here how bad I am at redstone because I ended up messing this redstone up several times. You can see here I decided to add just a really long route on one side and one side only. You can see here I messed up a clock. I don't know how I messed this up. And I messed up again because I just call it a clock. It's not a clock. You can see here I decided to shake it off and look towards where I thought the camera would be. I also messed up where I thought the camera would be. You can see me mess this up for a third time. And then I go and I make this with the repeaters and all the redstone and the junk. So I go and I figure this out and I'm like, oh crap, that was too fast. I didn't understand how the pulses work. So then I redo it, fix it, and I go over here and I change it. I make it so that it connects up to the original thing I did. I realize that the button will not work with what I originally intended. You can see me glitching and messing up and my brain frying. You can see here that I'm like, well, I'll just make the second part. So I go here and I'm like, okay, I'll have this here, I'll have an observer, wrong way, there we go, double observer, perfect. You can see here, well, maybe you can't see here because, again, this was really tired midship and I did not do any special editing or camera tricks. I just left the camera very, very stationary. So you can see here where I just kind of, well, like I said before, you can't see here, and I'm running out of dialogue to say because this tree is just so bad. Funny enough, it's not my least favorite tree. My least favorite tree is the tree from the Lorax. I love this tree because I just tried my very best. I tried so hard to make this good and then gave up in the end. I decided I would just have a dispenser filled with creeper eggs. As you can see over here, I accidentally left it while it was running, so I broke the redstone dust, and then I came over here. I realized, well, I gotta have a way to turn it off, so I went with my original plan, but instead of a button, I used a lever. You can see here I let it work. I added the redstone dust, and there it is. Alright, and here we go, starting with my final tree of the video. I actually recorded this one after I did the voiceovers for all the other ones. So this one, I decided that since I had talked about a couple of the other trees looking like mushrooms, I would have a mushroom. But we can go into what I'm actually building here. You can see I'm just trying to have fun, make it look like this place was in a radioactive, just war zone of sorts. So this one was the radioactive one. I loved the suggestion. I thought it would be really cool, so I decided to have a lot of fun with this. I actually deleted accidentally the original world with all the trees in it, so I had a lot of other plans to do with this tree, but I decided that I would just go and create a different world for it. So here you can see I'm widening out the base to make it look a bit better. I have the bright blue / green up at the top for the branches. I think that looks really good. You can see that I'm adding a lot of, I don't know what they are called. I think the crimson hyphae, nylium. I'm adding a bunch of those, the nether wood. So I'm adding that all around to make it look like it's kind of just a viney, but weird vines. So I'm going all around here and I'm adding all of that to this place and over there. Every nook and cranny I really can, because I want it to look really weird. I don't want this to look like a normal tree. Obviously this was in radioactive wasteland, so it's gonna look weird. So then I go, and with inspiration from B-Dubs on the Hermitcraft server and his TNT shop, I then went and used some nether brick fences all the way around the tree to kind of look like the tips are burnt and there's some burnt areas on it. So you can see here my camera imagery and magic is working, because over at this side is what I'm about to add some, I don't know what to call it, toxic waste next to it. I dug in the ground and I added some toxic waste, which you can't see too well from this view, but you'll be able to see it a little bit once I finalize the layering. I had 3 colors. I think I had dark green, lime green, and yellow in reverse order, bottom to top. And then I add the last little bit on top, and then I decided that I wanted to have almost some toxic bubbles coming out of the ground, so I decided to add those here. I love the look of this. This was also inspired by a member of the Hermitcraft. And then I go and I add just a little bit of details to it. And then, as I said, I was inspired by the rest of my builds, and I was like, well, let's add a mushroom. So I decided to have a mushroom growing out of this tree as if it grew out of the shell of the tree many years after it got toxic. So I go and I just make this very basic mushroom. I use just the mushroom stem and quartz. The original stem is made out of mushroom stem, and then the second half has a little bit of quartz at the end. Obviously it's not a great tree because I kind of just built this last minute, but I enjoyed this heavily. I added a little bit of extra stuff growing at the bottom, and there you go. Thanks for the suggestion.